What up, friends? I'm the King of Bugs, and today we're going to be reviewing the newest album by Black Country New Road, Ants From Up There. This is the second project overall by English rock and indie band Black Country New Road, released only a year after their debut album in 2021. I still do need to go back and listen to that one admittedly, but they've become like one of the new indie darlings in such a short period of time. It is definitely for good reason, though. The creativity on display here is seriously amazing, and the fact that they're able to go into such experimental territory, even going into like post-rock territory at times, they still put so much love into the vocals and lyrics and just overall experience that makes it so tight and punchy to listen to. Like, no indie fan should ever miss out on this album. After a properly quirky intro that sets up how dynamic this album is going to be, we get to the first main track of the record, Chaos Space Marine. The whimsical and light piano and strings create this sort of fantastical renaissance fair of an experience before the vocals come in. Despite this though, I also really like how sort of subtly ominous the guitar is with its sort of descending waterfall patterns here. That chorus is just amazing though, with this sort of triumphant fanfare that instills the message of the track, which is trying to get out of a bad relationship. However, the darker undertones suggest that the speaker here isn't quite as guilt-free of contributing to these toxic vibes in the relationship. The wittiness and relatability of this group and of this track really do show how they do have that Billie Eilish style. Slowing it down a bit, we get an elegant little ballad of sorts with Concorde depicting a longing for a new love. The delicate and dynamic guitar showcases his thoughts on this person, almost having like a daydream effect to showcase how smitten he is by them. The sax popping in here and there also captures these sort of feelings of hope that this relationship might work out. It's an airy sort of tune that feels good just because they're feeling good. The lyrics in general are very poetic, and I love how vivid they are in their opaqueness, if that makes sense. It's also pretty interesting how they're relatively uplifting, but like a lot of this album, there's some somber undertones here. Bread Song is another slower song on the record, but it's a bit more obvious in its darkness. The intro with the sparse guitar and vocals remind me of like a Half Moon Run song or something, so its intimacy is pretty well conveyed. The quiet brass and strings create a haunting atmosphere that effectively demonstrates the mindscape of lead singer Isaac and his relationship with this person. The rising instrumentation also does a great job in sort of showcasing his frustrations, both how he feels trapped in this relationship, but also how he didn't notice the signs of it deteriorating, so he might have been able to save it. The addition of the very driving beat in the second half also does a fantastic job in showcasing how these frustrations are starting to boil over. The isolated guitar intros keep on coming with Goodwill Hunting, however the beat on this one is noticeably different compared to every song previously. It's super catchy and it's probably one of the poppiest moments on the record, but it's done really well. The fact that they also just take the instrumental away and strip it down occasionally also represents the sort of anxiety felt in the lyrics as well, with Isaac wanting to do everything to save this relationship to the point where he's almost afraid to talk to his partner because one phone call could mean the end of the relationship. It has a sort of on and off pacing that's really interesting and dynamic, especially as the instrumental swells near the end of the track. Haldern opts for a slower little guitar-filled intro, however they do add in a piano to make it distinct a little bit. The gradual rise in the instruments comes a bit quicker than the previous tracks, however it also feels a bit more restrained, kind of being more obvious in the somber nature and outlook that Isaac is starting to have on his relationship. This is especially true as he's being very reminiscent on this track, sort of remembering all of the things that he really liked about this person. I feel like this track does a great job in showcasing the turmoil in Isaac's head, as the instrumentals are largely very soft and somber, however there are these louder moments that come crashing in to break up the pacing to represent both the good and bad outlooks that he's been having on his relationship. I do think the piano and the brass repeat for a bit too long at the ending of the track. It kind of hurts the pacing a little bit, but overall that's kind of a minor gripe. Mark's theme is a noticeable shift in tone and structure, as this track is essentially an instrumental, jazz-inspired lullaby of sorts. The sax is elegant, but in a very dark way, as this track is dedicated to an uncle of one of the band members who died of COVID. It's a simple but effective tribute. I will say it does feel a bit odd to have this track come after the previous one from both an instrumental standpoint and just like a pacing standpoint in general. It probably would have fit better maybe at the end of the record or maybe near the beginning, but I think the track itself is pretty solid. Now, the last 3 songs on the record, back to back, are probably some of the best musical moments that I've heard in quite a while. The place where he inserted the blade is definitely my favorite track on the project, from the subtle sax and understated piano to the heavy emphasis on the vocals. The transition from the melancholic verses to the very upbeat and lively chorus is excellent, especially as Isaac is kind of looking back at how he just fucks up at these increasingly basic tasks, and his partner would always be there for him to comfort him. This is, of course, when they were both still on good terms, and that last chorus especially is probably the highlight of this record. It's probably one of the most heartfelt and satisfying things that I've heard in a minute, man. Nearing the end of the very dramatic back portion of the record, we have Snow Globes, another fantastic track. The instrumental intro provides some great build-up, but the vocals are the real star of the show for me. Isaac is comparing his relationship to that of Catherine and Henry VIII of all things, but not only is it just like really bizarre and quirky, but it's also like peak indie too. It's so oddly weird, yet oddly fitting too. It's oddly emotional, but also very captivating. This goes for the structure of the track as well, with just an intro, a verse, and a final refrain as everything just devolves into emotional madness as Isaac finally realizes that his relationship can't be saved. There's nothing anybody can do about it. The final repetition of "Oh God of Weather, Henry knows, snow globes don't shake on their own" is his final attempt at rekindling the relationship, with the drums kind of crashing in to express this dedication, but even that's not enough. It's a pretty haunting track, man. Basketball Shoes is the last hurrah of the album, encapsulating pretty much everything that makes this band great. The gradual build-up, the multiple parts in both the instrumentation and the story, alongside just honesty and raw emotion. This track has undertones of acceptance, as Isaac seems to have mostly accepted the fact that the relationship is over and he's trying to move on. I think it's a witty and relatable post-breakup song, as he can kind of still find some humor in his suffering with the line, "So if you see me looking strange with a fresh style, I'm still not feeling all that great." This song and its emphasis on the sax kind of reminds me of Talk Talk of all things, which is pretty high praise. Our boy is still down horrendous though, with some pretty intimate moments and thoughts about Charlie XCX, but he's on the mend, guys, so here's hoping for him. So if you couldn't tell, I love this album. It takes elements of indie, post-rock, and art rock and combines them in ways that are both accessible yet also very dynamic and experimental. The lyrics and vocals also deserve immense praise, feeling very down-to-earth and relatable. It's also expressive and emotional, and Isaac and the rest of the band do a great job in just fully creating and realizing all of these sort of images and scenarios that are in Isaac's lyrics. If I were to complain about anything at all on this record, sometimes the instrumentals can blend into each other a bit, sometimes I feel like the tracks could have even more of a distinct identity from one another, and occasionally the pacing was a little bit off, like placing Mark's theme right after Haldern, but these are extremely minor critiques. Now that lead singer Isaac has left the band for mental health reasons, it's kind of unclear where the future of the group is going to go. However, whether or not this is it for them or they continue on with another member being the main vocalist, this is a fantastic project, and if they do continue, I hope to see even more instrumental variety and just continue with the expressive songwriting just as they did here. I'm feeling a strong 9 on this album. However, I can see this going to a light 10 maybe in the future. Of course, we do have to talk about album covers on this show, and this is just peak indie album cover, man. The imagery is just really interesting. It's sort of esoteric as to how it actually relates to the record, but in a way that also makes it more engaging. The color combination is really good, with the gold plane tying into the warmer brown and orangish hues of the wood. The sort of silver in the little hook with the bag is really well done. Everything just combines perfectly. It's very intriguing and interesting, and it just makes you want to go into the record, I think. So I think they did a great job with this album cover. Of course, that is all I have to say about this new album by Black Country New Road. What do you guys think? Do you also think that this is just some of the best indie that we've gotten in quite a long while? Or is it a bit too weird and quirky for you? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell if you walk a lonely road, and until the next one, farewell.